On December 7, 1988, a devastating earthquake struck northern Armenia, then part of the Soviet Union, killing tens of thousands and leaving the region in ruins. Known as the Spitak earthquake, this catastrophic event destroyed entire cities and villages, leaving a profound impact on the people of Armenia and prompting an unprecedented international response. This narrative explores the events surrounding the Spitak earthquake, the immediate and long-term consequences, and the global effort to provide aid and support in the aftermath of one of the deadliest earthquakes of the 20th century.
Armenia, located in a seismically active region of the Caucasus, has a long history of earthquakes, but none in modern times matched the sheer devastation of the Spitak earthquake. The region is crisscrossed by several fault lines, making it vulnerable to significant seismic activity. The Soviet Union, to which Armenia belonged at the time, was ill-prepared for a disaster of this magnitude, particularly in a region where many buildings were not designed to withstand strong earthquakes. In 1988, Armenia was already facing significant challenges, including political tensions and economic difficulties. The earthquake struck at a time when the Soviet Union itself was experiencing political and economic instability, which further complicated the response to the disaster.
At 11:41 a.m. local time on December 7, 1988, a powerful earthquake measuring 6.8 on the Richter scale struck northern Armenia. The epicenter was near the town of Spitak, and the earthquake's effects were felt across much of the country. The quake was particularly destructive because of its shallow depth, which concentrated the energy close to the surface, leading to extreme ground shaking. The earthquake caused widespread destruction in several cities, including Spitak, Leninakan, now Gyumri, and Kirovakan, now Vanadzor. In Spitak, nearly all buildings were flattened, and the town was almost entirely destroyed. In Leninakan, the second largest city in Armenia, many multi-story apartment buildings collapsed, trapping thousands of people under the rubble. The scale of the disaster was immense. An estimated 25,000 to 50,000 people were killed, and hundreds of thousands were left homeless. The earthquake also caused extensive damage to infrastructure, including roads, bridges, hospitals, and schools. Many of the buildings that collapsed had been poorly constructed or inadequately reinforced, exacerbating the death toll.
The immediate aftermath of the earthquake was chaotic and heart-wrenching. Rescue efforts began almost immediately, but the sheer scale of the destruction overwhelmed local authorities and rescue teams. The harsh winter weather and damaged infrastructure made it difficult to reach many of the affected areas, and the lack of proper equipment and trained personnel further hindered rescue operations. Survivors and rescuers worked tirelessly to dig through the rubble with their bare hands, hoping to find survivors trapped beneath the debris. However, as the hours and days passed, the chances of finding people alive diminished. The emotional toll on the rescuers and the survivors was immense, as entire families were lost, and entire communities were obliterated. The Soviet government, under Mikhail Gorbachev, faced immense criticism for its slow response to the disaster. The magnitude of the earthquake caught the authorities off guard, and the central government's ability to coordinate an effective response was hampered by bureaucratic inefficiencies and the limitations of the Soviet system. The disaster also highlighted the inadequacies of Soviet-era construction practices, which had prioritized speed and cost over safety. Despite the challenges, the international community quickly mobilized to provide aid. Countries from around the world, including the United States, France, Germany, and Italy, sent rescue teams, medical supplies, food, and financial assistance to Armenia. This international response was notable for its scale and for the fact that it occurred during the Cold War, a time of tense relations between the Soviet Union and the West. The disaster prompted a rare moment of cooperation between East and West, as humanitarian concerns took precedence over political differences.
The long-term impact of the Spitak earthquake was profound. In addition to the immediate loss of life and the destruction of infrastructure, the disaster left a lasting mark on Armenia's social and economic fabric. The region's recovery was slow and arduous, hampered by the ongoing political and economic turmoil in the Soviet Union, which collapsed just a few years later in 1991. Rebuilding efforts were complicated by the collapse of the Soviet Union and the subsequent independence of Armenia. The country faced significant challenges in securing the resources needed to rebuild its cities and infrastructure. Many of the survivors were left to cope with the trauma of losing their loved ones and homes, and the psychological scars of the disaster lingered for years. The Spitak earthquake also led to significant changes in earthquake preparedness and building codes in Armenia and other parts of the former Soviet Union. The disaster highlighted the need for improved construction standards, particularly in seismically active regions. In the years following the earthquake, efforts were made to strengthen buildings and infrastructure to better withstand future earthquakes. Internationally, the Spitak earthquake served as a reminder of the importance of global cooperation in responding to natural disasters. The unprecedented international response demonstrated the capacity of the global community to come together in times of crisis, setting a precedent for future disaster relief efforts. The earthquake also left a lasting legacy in terms of humanitarian aid. It prompted the creation of numerous charitable organizations and foundations dedicated to disaster relief, many of which continue to operate today. These organizations have played a crucial role in providing assistance to communities affected by natural disasters around the world.
The 1988 Spitak earthquake was a tragedy of immense proportions, leaving deep scars on the people of Armenia and challenging the nation to rebuild in the face of overwhelming loss. The disaster highlighted the vulnerabilities of poorly constructed buildings in earthquake-prone regions and underscored the need for better preparedness and response strategies. As we remember the victims of the Spitak earthquake, we are reminded of the importance of international solidarity and the need for ongoing efforts to protect communities from the devastating effects of natural disasters. The legacy of the Spitak earthquake endures in the lessons learned and the global commitment to helping those in need during times of crisis.